This is the Always Direct podcast, and we talk with movers and shakers of this world to learn about the ups and downs they went through to get where they are now. Let's get started with the show.
Hey guys, my name is John Rayon, and I'm an entrepreneur, franchisor, restaurateur, and a lover of all things business. And I am the host of Always Direct podcast, where we speak with movers and shakers in a bunch of different industries to find out what it took in the early days to get where they are now. I am so excited today to speak with my guest, Noah Alper. Noah is the author of Business Mensch, Timeless Wisdom for Today's Entrepreneur. He is the founder of Noah's Bagels, which was one of the largest kosher bakeries chains that in the early 2000s, and it sold to Einstein Bagels for just under $100 million. And I'd like to say thank you for coming on the show, Noah. I'm very excited to talk to you.
Thank you. Nice to be here, John.
Thank you. So Noah, what are you doing these days?
A little of this and a little of that. I'm doing small business coaching and advising. I'm doing some speaking at college campuses, at business schools. I'm traveling, I'm playing golf, I'm riding my bike, I'm visiting my grandchildren, all of the above.
That sounds like the best way to live. Seems like it.
Yeah, well, a little bit of at this stage of the game, it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, as opposed to a single focus and drive it all the way home. It works pretty well. I think that sitting under a palm tree has never been my style. So keeping busy is important.
Well, yeah. I mean, definitely you want to stay active, keep the brain moving, helping people, family.
Right.
So do you travel a lot, or are you staying in the California?
Well, I was, before COVID, I was traveling a lot. Yeah. We have one kid in New York, another kid in Israel. And so, we're jumping around, visiting them a lot, and other travel.
How many grandkids do you have?
3.
3. Oh, I see that smile. That's the joy of life right there.
Oh yeah. There's not a lot of huge rewards of getting older, but grandkids is certainly one of them.
Well, that's great. Yeah, that's what I hear. Obviously, you don't know until you experience it, but my dad and mom definitely have pushed me out of the way for my kids now. So
yeah.
They don't even love me as much. I feel neglected slightly compared to.
Well, they all, they say that you're probably old one, but the reason grandparents and grandkids get along so well is they have a common enemy. It's very, very, very intuitive.
It seems that way. That makes sense. Now it all. I will say that does make sense. And then they can spoil them, and then whenever they start to act up,
yeah, and then they just give them back.
Yeah, we'll deal with the problems.
Right.
Okay, so Noah, I am personally an entrepreneur and a restaurateur. I started a company called Papa Ray's Pizza. I've been in trucking businesses. I started a marketing company, which is Always Direct Marketing and alwaysdirectmail.com. And my restaurants, I got it up to 5 locations. We franchised it. It's a restaurant business, is a very tough business. And I have so many questions for you. You are like my ideal person to speak with because you've been through it. I mean, you've been through so much. I listened to your podcast. I tried to download your book today. It's not on Audible, is it?
I was just thinking about that the other day, John. No, it's not. I'm going to work on that though, but no, it's not at the moment.
Most of the younger generation now, they're
right.
always moving. They're throwing it on Audible. It's just easy, So I definitely think you should.
Truth is, yesterday was the first time I'd ever gone on Audible myself. Sure. And it feels like cheating, somehow you're getting this whole thing and you don't have to do anything and it's great. So I'm seriously thinking about putting my book on Audible. It's not at the moment.
Yeah, and one of the best parts about Audible is that you can put it on, if you have a slow reader, you can put it on a certain speed so that you can read the book much faster. So 1.25 or 1.5 times the normal speed. And suddenly a book that might have taken you 8 hours is taking you 5.5 hours. So you're just consuming things so much faster.
So, I mean, you're reading and listening at the same time?
I don't. You could, but I don't do that. I just listen as I'm jogging or I'm walking or I'm driving.
Oh, so you can change the speed of the
Audio, yeah.
Gotcha. I didn't know.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Okay.
So there's a lot of, you're pretty well known on the internet, and there's a lot of information about you. You've been on podcasts, you've given speeches at Google, which I listen to. You are very successful in so many different industries, but what I'm going to focus on here is I would love to, if it's okay with you, I'd love to focus on the early days when you started Noah's Bagels.
Sure.
Mindset, partnerships,
Right.
insecurities. I want to ask you so many questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Does that sound good?
Sure, sounds good.
Okay, so you moved to California from the East Coast, if I'm not mistaken, and where was your parents living at that time? Were you everybody East Coast?
Well, Dad was gone when I moved out here. My mother was mostly in Florida, a little bit in Massachusetts in the summer.
Gotcha. And did you so that it's hard to leave. See, it's hard to uproot and move to you move to the opposite side of the country, and a lot of people find that very difficult to do because family, roots, property, sometimes cousins, connections. You don't know anybody out there. How was it?
Definitely. Well, you raised an interesting point because I'm the kind of guy that is sort of like go to the end of the diving board and see if there's water there. And if I get a 80% chance there's water in there, I'll probably dive in. And that's how the trip out here happened. And I didn't foresee a huge problem. I had a brother out here. At that time, I had a couple of cousins out here, so I had a little bit of family out here. But once I had this dream, John, and I'm sure you've experienced this too. You have this dream that you've developed, and then, when it starts to actualize, you realize, what, that's not really what I want to do. I had this dream of moving to Santa Cruz, which is a very cute little beach town. It's a university. But when I got there, first of all, my brother wasn't there. He's in Berkeley. It's an hour and a half away. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have a job at that point. I didn't have a place to live. I was nowheresville, and the place was not right for me. And within a week, I was out of there. Now, this is something I dreamed about for like 4 or 5 years. So, it was the transition wasn't easy. But on the other hand, it's nice out here. Let's put it that way. There's not a lot not to like in my, from my standpoint. It took a while. It was rocky for a while. And then it kind of worked in, and now, it's just a very nice place to live. Yeah,
California is it's the best. I mean, it's not as business friendly as I wish it was, but it's the geography and the beaches and the landscape, you can't touch it, and the weather, you can't beat it.
Yeah, and I, coming from Boston, hard. I got out here, and I tell you, my nephew put it well. He's a venture capitalist, and he's done very well out here. But he said when he came out here from Boston, he says, like, everyone's sitting around drinking Chardonnay, with his Boston accent, and I'm like, well, East Coast, So it was truthfully in business. It was really helpful to not have come from here and to be able to, employ my sort of hard driving East Coast ways in an environment that's a lot more laid back.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But lifestyle wise, that laid backness is nice.
Yeah. I've seen that whenever I've traveled to different countries, or I even go South America, Central America, or even I go to Indianapolis. Sometimes we open a restaurant in Indianapolis, and I go there and I'm like, man, I can run this place if I just moved here, because I feel like I have the ambition and the energy of like a crazy man compared to these people. So I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so you move out to California, and then you decide to open up. I don't know how long it took you to decide to open up a bagel restaurant, but let's talk about the first bagel restaurant. Did you buy an existing, or did you open up from
Well,
scratch?
I want to jump back because I think that the backstory of the bagels is important.
Tell me.
So let me give it to you briefly.
Sure.
So I get out here, and this is a longer story and a sidetrack from where you want to go. But basically, before that, I go to Israel. Okay, never been there. Jewish, but not religious. Just like a destination spot. I get very excited about Israel, and I come back, and then I get in my car and I drive west, and it was all like at the same time. Get out here to have the week in Santa Cruz, not working for me, come back to Berkeley. What am I going to do? And then I decide I'm going to import gifts and food from the Holy Land and sell them to fundamentalist Christians. Okay, this is my idea,
Yeah.
and it turns out to be a total disaster. I mean, nothing goes right about that business at all. And then I don't know what the hell to do with myself. I've started 4 businesses; they were successful, but now what? And
This was one of your first major failures in
yeah,
business, right?
yeah. And I was, and then I had a couple of kids at that point, so. It was like, time to do something. I had to do something. And I started looking at jobs, which, I hadn't really had worked for anybody else. I was always on my own. My brother gives me this idea about bagels that he had seen a place in Montreal. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I never baked anything in my life. I don't know anything about baking. I'm an amateur chef, but measuring stuff, and that's not really my thing. Look into it for a year and kind of put it all together in terms of, will this thing work? Am I going to be able to do it, et cetera, et cetera, and come to the conclusion after about 7 months or so that I can do this for a number of reasons, and then takes time to find a location and then build it out and so forth. And so first store opens a year after I started the endeavor. I'll tell you a little brief story about the store opening, which I think is significant for your listeners. Which is, brand new building, prime location, little parking lot, really just near other food establishments. It was really an ideal location. The landlord, a year after I operated there and was doing very well, told me in confidence that when she looked at me as a tenant, her first instinct was, guy's never done bagels before. The previous business failed. I don't know. This is a risky proposition. But what she said was the kind of the fire, we talked about this before. The drive that she saw in me said, you know what? Whatever this guy does, he's going to succeed. And so I think that that drive certainly was a huge factor in the success of that business. Made me focus on detail, made me look at competition all the way through, even though when we were sailing along, making sure I was looking behind me and see who was coming behind to chase me, competition-wise. And so that's a long way about telling you about the opening.
That's great, and why this is great for the listeners and for myself is because you had some successul businesses prior. You've done well in the salad bowl with the right. Rustic salad bowls, and then you had you got married, you had kids, and you take this risk with the Holy Land products and it doesn't work out. Suddenly you're I don't know if this is true, and I think I heard this on the Google talks. Your ego starts to get scared. You start to get a little bit scared of, not scared, but like you start to realize that you're not not everything's going to be a win. And so suddenly, and then you go and you do something else you haven't touched before, which is a bagel business, which is kind of crazy.
Totally crazy.
but in a good way.
Well, let me put it this way, John. The one and only rack of bagels I made came out very bad. And I decided this is not what I'm going to do again. I'm very good at selling the bagels. Making them is another story. So, relying on people who have the skill set, the mentality, the whole thing to do it right, critique it. My father used to say, you can delegate but not abnegate. Okay?
Yeah, I might take that.
It's a very good line. And so we did probably do too much abnegation, but only because, we do so clueless in terms of how to do it in the first place. A combination of clueless as to how to do it and obsessive about the quality.
Sure.
So it was an interesting combination.
So when you, and I got so many questions about just this section. And so when you were, how old were you at this time? About.
Yeah, I was 38.
38. And you were.
No, wait. Excuse me. More like 40, a little over 40.
Okay. So around the 40 mark. And you decided to open a bagel store and you found this location that's, you felt was going to be perfect for it. Can I ask you what kind of square footage was it? Was it like a big place or a small place? Carry out, delivery, dine-in?
2,000 feet. Limited seating, mostly takeout.
Okay, and you didn't. Where'd you get the recipes from? Did you go buy books and talk to people?
Whole other story. It's crazy. It was a crazy story, and I think
I love it. I want to hear it.
It tells a side story, and the side story is. Goes back to the title of my book, which is be a mensch, be a person who does the right thing when no one's looking, okay? So I had a very good customer in a previous business, in the salad bowl business. And so as I'm looking around in the bagel business, which in turn was let me just take you on a little side trip here.
Let's do it.
Okay. So you ever heard of Lender's Bagels?
No.
Okay. It was a long story, short. Bagel business started in the major urban pockets of the East and to some degree central states, Chicago, Cleveland, Boston, but mostly, that and East.
Sure.
In the 50s, late 50s, a guy named Murray Lender decides to put bagels on the national map. Much like, John, when I was a kid, believe this or not, very hard to find pizza outside the Italian neighborhoods of Boston, okay? No malls, no pizza on the corner. Had to go to the Italian section to find pizza. Same with bagels. You had to go to the Jewish section. Murray Lender brings bagels to the freezer section of supermarkets across the country. But before he does that, he goes to a convention in New Hampshire. He's just starting out. My mother sees somebody lying on the chaise lounge outside is the motel room. Says to my father, go and see what's going on out there, Dave. Turns out it's Murray Lender, who wound up selling this bagel business for $100 million. Okay, just him and his brother. But this is when he was first starting. And my dad goes out and starts talking to him because it was a food convention. Turns out he had applied late. He couldn't get a room. And he was sleeping out in the chaise lounge, okay, just about to start the business. So fast forward, he's got this huge business going on. I call Murray Lender, who is a friend of my father's, and say, Murray, I'm going into thinking about the bagel business. Can I come and talk to you? Yes. I go to Connecticut. We talk. He sends me to an equipment company in Long Island. I talked to the equipment people about, can I really do this? Oh, yeah, we have customers in, hither and yon who knew nothing about bagels. They've done very well with it. Gives me the name of someone to look into. Turns out it's a customer from a previous business, nothing to do with the bagels whatsoever, who had decided on her own to go into the bagel business. Sue, can I come and see your business? Yes. I go to see her business. She's got a fabulous bagel. Sue, can I buy the recipe from you? It's not my recipe. It belongs to this other guy. I go to Rhode Island. I talk to the other guy. Yes, you can buy the recipe. Yes, you can buy my expertise. And that's how it happened.
Yeah,
Long
see,
story short.
that's I want the long story. I always like the long story. Let me tell you, there's so much in there. There's so much in there. You know, I feel like I feel like such like I feel like I'm talking to somebody who is similar to myself. Back in, you have somebody, you talk about having ants in your pants and and riding the waves and of when brands come out. You don't want to be too far into it where it's going to crash down, but you don't want to be too early on where you don't know nobody knows what the hell you're talking about. And I feel like I'm living your early days right now. So that's why I was really excited to talk to you, because so the fact that you didn't know anything about the business, you start calling around asking for help from mentors or people who could buy recipes, get some advice. I mean, free advice, paid advice. You're willing to travel to go talk to them. You're willing to go take something that's not been done before and bring it to an area that's never been touched before. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. It took a lot of guts, took a lot of balls, if you don't mind. Cospa, there it is. More nicer way of saying it. And I love that. I love that. There's so much to be learned from anybody listening to this. When you're young and, you just, well, I don't know how to do a podcast. I don't know how to do this. Or don't worry. Nobody knows how to do anything until you go out and you just figure it out. And you're going to make a ton of mistakes and you're going to probably screw up and you're going to get tired. You're going to get discouraged. So what kept you? So were you confident the whole time that you were going to be successful in the bagel in that one store, or were you kind of nervous?
Well, let me back up for a bit and just say that during that year, I guess because I was in my 40s at that point, and I had the kids, I was, as crazy as it was, John, I was a little more careful than I would have been 5 years earlier.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So I went and what I found out talking to these equipment guys and all of these various people was bagels, the whole industry was ascending on the national stage. Okay. That back to my previous story, it had left the ethnic pockets of the East, and it was becoming like pizza. It was becoming
mainstream.
It was American food. Okay. There were some very successful bagel shops in Tulsa, in places that, didn't know a Jew from a lamppost. Okay. And so I'm like, okay, I got that data point, which I didn't call data points in those days, but I had that piece of information. And then I started to look at the local market out here. And what I realized was in another business, I had attended the first ever gourmet product show held in San Francisco. Okay, this is New York and San Francisco, the epicenters of gourmet, or whatever you'd want to call it, experimental, high-end food in the country and largely around the world. And guess what? There weren't any great bagel shops out here. Okay, so I had found the great recipe. So I got 3 pieces. You put all those pieces together: demand, great product, and drive, and a methodology that was what I learned was a little trickier than I thought it was, which was actually making the things. But I did use new technology, which made it a whole lot easier. And so I had done my homework, is what I'm really trying to say, and didn't pull the trigger until it was right. And I think your point earlier is very true. In terms of entrepreneurs are often flying on one wing, if you will, sort of more, guts than glory, or whatever you want to call it. But what I've found is entrepreneurs are doing a lot of homework. It may not seem like it. It may not sound like it, but I'm sure before you open Papa Ray's, you had a damn good recipe, or you had a good location, or you had expertise or something. You had components of it. You had pieces of it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have done it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So were you the first bagel restaurant in that area completely? There was nobody else near you.
No, there were others here, but they weren't great.
Gotcha. So
Yeah.
you were bringing a high quality product.
That's right.
To an area that was they weren't giving the product that you felt like they deserved or they would appreciate.
It was like so-so.
So. And was it lox and fish, or was it just bagels and cream cheese?
Our place?
Yeah.
Yeah. Our place, what we did was something a little bit different too. You probably not, but maybe you have heard of appetizing stores in New York. Is that not familiar to you? Okay.
No.
Let me again take you a slight side trip. You've heard of delis, obviously.
Yeah.
German delis, Jewish delis, whatever. Because of kosher laws, originally, you couldn't mix milk and meat. Okay. So these stores, I'm giving you a very short story. These stores in the Lower East Side of New York, where Jewish immigrants wound up en masse, the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. I mean, probably the most densely populated area in the world at that point, like on the order of Calcutta, Bombay. The traveling nurses started down there because there was so much disease, because everything was so crowded and packed in, okay? That kind of place, push carts. They would have these appetizing stores, which were fundamentally dairy delis, okay? So you could buy all kinds of cheese, you could buy fish, which isn't considered meat. That's another story. Pickles, baked goods, stuff like that. So my first bagel store was a combination of an appetizing store. So in other words, all kinds of fish, all kinds of cream cheese spreads, olives, pickles, stuff like that, as well as the bagels. So it was kind of like two stores in one, but it was mostly the bagels. These other things were accompaniment for them, whereas a real appetizing store would be mostly, these fish and cheese selections.
Gotcha. And we're at this first location. Did you have a partner, or did you use your own money? Did you borrow money? How did you do that?
So I was thinking about this lately. No, I had gone through most of my father's inheritance. I had $50,000 left, and I borrowed about the same from each one of my two brothers, and that put me in business.
Perfect. And so in the back of the bagel restaurant, the first one, you bought the equipment, the ovens, or boilers, the machines to make all this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And you never really got into learning you learned how to do it because you need to teach people how to do it, but you never liked it. You tried to stay away from it as much as possible so that you could focus on the growth. That
part made me nervous.
Sure.
Actually doing it made me nervous because it takes different, I'm still trying to figure myself out because, you're not
an operations guy.
I'm not an operations guy.
Yeah.
Okay, now I've got it figured out. I'm not an operations guy.
Yeah. I bet I'm the same way.
But however, I mean, I'm very obsessive about details in that. In other words, QC, QA, I'm all over that. Okay, but actually doing it, that's got to be somebody else.
Sure. You'll analyze it. You'll create the checklists. You'll create the recipe books. You'll help them figure out how to do it and then duplicate it through that part. But you're not going to do on a day-to-day operations. You can't do it.
If it isn't right, they're going to hear from me.
Exactly.
On an hourly, if not minute by minute basis.
I'm sure. Well, if you're going to take it from 1 to 38, there's no way you can't do it any other way.
Well, but except that wasn't the plan.
No, of course, it never is, right?
I guess it's not. It is for some people.
Well, yeah, maybe, but not. Doesn't sound like you were trying to create an empire. You just wanted to have a successful business.
One store, great store, and take it from there.
How long did it take before? So was it gangbusters from day one, or was it the? Oh,
I mean, what the interesting piece was for me was the Holy Land Gifts was such a failure. I mean, it was like 1 week I had 3 orders. I'm like, oh, this thing's going to turn around, mail order business. And then, it was back to like 1 every other week. I mean, it was a total and abysmal failure.
yeah.
And so I leave that and I start developing this thing. And, you never know until you open the door. I mean, you just don't. You asked before, was I confident? Yeah, I was definitely confident. I was a great recipe, great location. I was very confident this thing was going to work. But you don't know. And then I opened the door and oh my God, I mean, there were lines around the block from day one.
That's awesome.
I mean, it was like being, striking out in the farm, the single A farm ball club, and then, going to the World Series and the first pitch, you hit a home run.
Yeah. Yeah. So how long did it take before you opened a second location?
Okay. So then this is another piece that I think is very important to get out, was that this was not my own success. This was a team effort all the way. Specifically, I want to give full credit to the brother who gave me the idea in the first place. He had seen a bagel place in Montreal, said you ought to do this in Berkeley. So it was his idea. I took it and I executed it. Not like a Montreal bagel shop, because that's a whole different animal than a New York bagel. The product is different. The methodology is different. I learned soon into the game that I didn't want a Montreal bagel. That's another story. Okay, how long did it take me? Roughly a year after I opened the first store, going great. The brother who gave me the idea makes overtures that he wants in. And he's 5 years older, and I'm like, I don't know about this. Like, who's going to be the boss?
Yeah.
The whole thing sounded interesting because I knew this thing had legs. Okay, I mean, obviously it had legs. We were doing $1.5 million out of a 2,000-foot store in 1989. Okay,
it's massive.
I mean, it was massive. I mean, we were doing a wholesale business out of there. I mean, I had bags of stuff all on the customer area that, until the store opened, and then they were all gone because, we had a delivery kid take them out to the local coffee shops. We had already started a wholesale business. We were way over capacity. I mean, it was crazy in there, crazy good. So I debated, and do I let the brother in? How the hell is this going to work? Until my mother said, "You need to bring Danny into the business." So, nice Jewish boy. How am I not? What am I supposed to do? So, all right, I'll figure it out. So, long story. He has a partner. He has a friend who wants in, a financial partner. We figure out a way to do a licensed operation. So it wasn't a full-blown franchise, but we spent forever developing this license, agreement. And we do. And the way it's going to work is he's going to open stores and license the name and pay royalties and pay per bagel. And I'm going to produce them and do the marketing. And that's the way it starts.
So you were going to create a commissary?
Yeah, which we did. We created a commissary, and then shortly after the commissaries developed, store number 2 opens. That was the trajectory, and that lasted for. I'm not going to be great on how many years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that lasted for, I want to say like a year or two, something like that. He brought in, his style was so different than mine, which is one of the keys to the success of the business. He was a Stanford MBA, analytical, detail-oriented, operations-oriented, but not hands-on. More like, so not maybe operations-oriented, more like a banker. He was a financier kind of guy.
He analyzed a lot of things, but he never really touched anything.
Right. He didn't want to touch anything. Okay, he'd get his hands dirty. But he was very good at picking people. Had a real intuitive sense of personnel. Had a big vision. And I was always like good stuff cheap, So I would get employees who, had a lot of potential, and I could get them, without paying a fortune because they were on their way up or on their way down, or old
Sure.
guys who had a lot of something. But I never was great at getting really great people who could build something and ascend, like he had a vision of this. So he chose a young guy who was brilliant and super energetic and a little abrasive, but good enough. And Bill ran the business, and my brother was kind of in the shadows almost from the beginning, but not too far into the shadows. And then we eventually merged on Bill's suggestion. Merged the 2 operations, the whole licensing thing, and Bill was absolutely right on about this. From a financing standpoint, from a employee attraction standpoint, from attracting high quality talent, it needed to be a company, like one entity. Okay.
Sure.
That was gonna really be able to go in full guns. And so we retained company-owned status all the way through the whole 6.5-year ride.
No way.
Yeah.
No way. So the second location obviously was equal or similar to as successful as the first one?
Yeah, the second location also, it wasn't a grand slam, but it was a total home run.
Okay. So it was profitable from day one. It was making money, cranking it out.
Yeah.
Okay. And then so you said you got a licensing deal with this gentleman, but after about a year, you said he could be a good fit for my business as well. I could see myself working with him more. He's not going to be one of those guys who's going to cause a problem. Let's merge together and we can grow together.
As a matter of fact, what really tipped me to this whole thing was, I told you about how great I was making bagels, okay?
Yeah.
So I'm on vacation, and every time I went on vacation for 6 years of this business, something major happened, okay?
Why would it be any other way?
And it got like increasingly more serious, okay? Like started out, I just take you on this side trip. The first time the baker and the store manager got into a fist fight and the cops had to come in.
Sure.
Right? And then it went from there to, I don't remember exactly the sequence of events, but the last 2 I do remember was we had a big Bobcat delivery truck, and it tipped over and the driver was almost killed. Okay. And the other big one was that union almost came into the factory. Okay. there was a major, all of this stuff happened every single time. So the time, that was 3 of the episodes. The 4th episode, and again, the sequencing, okay, this was after about the first or second time I went on vacation. The factory was failing. It wasn't, the guy that was running it, was a real problem. We could not produce, and my brother's company, which was, they were licensees, weren't getting product, okay, in enough quantity, and the quality wasn't. I mean, the whole thing was not right, and so I'm on vacation. I don't know where the hell I am. Maybe Hawaii. I don't remember where I was. I called up, and this Bill guy. I said, Bill. I said, I don't have much. We don't have much choice here. You're going to have to go in and figure out what's going on in the factory. I know it's not your job, but we're hand and foot in this thing, and someone's got to come and do this, and I'm not around, and I'm not coming back. So it looks like it's you. And he came in and he straightened it out. And I realized at that point, he kept pounding my brother to merge these businesses together. And I said, you know what? I've got to get out of this factory like now. So that's what we did.
And you, your brother, and and Bill, you guys were together for the whole ride?
Yeah.
Very cool. That's great. That's beautiful to hear. I mean, no problems, right? Even at the end.
Well, you know what they say, John. A rising tide floats all ships.
Yes.
Okay, so we're doing well. We're pounding it, and so we had some disagreements, but they were really pretty minor.
Okay.
They were, very minor.
And so you started out with no partners. You ended up having some partners, and actually, growing from 0 to 38 units, 7 years, however long it took, it can be very lonely. It can be very lonely when you're on your own. So having those guys to feed, have ideas go back and forth, it's very important.
About it. I had always been a lone wolf, and all of a sudden I had this team, and thank God, because I could concentrate on what I was good at.
And this is where I wanted to ask you. You've mentioned it in other videos, so I know you're okay with it, but I just wanted to bring up. So this time, you're in your 40s. You're successful. You've got a business it's gangbusters. You got you got money, but your relationship with your wife is starting to fall apart a little bit. Can you talk about that? Was she working with you? Is this happening at the same time?
No, I think.
Or growing apart.
I don't know how I explained it, but it was more like I had no time. I had no time for anything.
Sure.
The business. So I started to realize that when I would come home, my kids would jump all over me. They were little kids. You have kids, I take it, from what?
Yeah, I have 3 daughters. Yes.
Okay. Well, I had 3 sons, so the opposite. But whatever. I was like, just let me go to sleep. I want to eat and go to sleep, and that's all. And I started to think of them as like minor annoyances, And I said to myself, my kids are minor annoyances. There's a problem here. Yeah. So no, I didn't really have any major problems with my wife. Maybe I'm not sure, but maybe you were thinking about like another business where I really had problems with my wife.
No, you know what? You didn't. We're getting. It's a very common problem when you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Marriages become hard to. It's hard to deal with everything.
I mean, she saw herself as Mrs. Noah. And like, who am I? What am I? I mean, like a sidebar, So that's hard.
Sure.
I mean, something's got to give. You drive a business this hard. Something's got to give in your personal life. Fortunately for me, I alluded to it briefly, but the trip to Israel spawned a religious sort of journey. And part of that journey was keeping the Sabbath. So what that meant was from day one, I wasn't in that store on Saturday. And that store was very busy on Saturday. And later on, all the stores were busy on Saturdays, and I wasn't involved. And so that, I would say, thank God for that one day, because that really, if it wasn't for that, I mean, the marriage could have busted up. I could have gone berserk. But
Sure.
having the day off was very important.
Yeah, I think of the Big Lebowski when I think of I don't work on the set.
I don't roll on. Yeah.
Back in those times, were you reading a lot? Are you a reader, or are you more of a mentor kind of guy? Tell me about how you were personal growth in this time.
I'm not a business book reader, if that's what you mean. I was mostly involved in Jewish studies at that point in terms of my reading and my interest. I got the trip to Israel it got me excited on a kind of a gut level, emotional level. Felt like I was home, even though I'd never been there. The whole cultural piece of all of these tribe members who, I grew up in a very assimilated home. I had no real Jewish sense of pride, if you will. I wanted to kind of be an American. And all of this got me very excited. And then I started to get interested in the religious piece and really studied it, if you will, almost as a academic pursuit.
Sure. Is it fair to say that perhaps that trip got you closer to God?
No, definitely. It got me aware that God existed.
Yeah.
It was a transformational trip.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Did you ever own the properties of where the restaurants were, or did you guys lease?
No, it was all lease.
And at this time, you're in your 40s, and you're thinking, are you reinvesting all your money into the businesses? Are you buying other properties like apartment complexes or shopping centers or any other diversification, or were you completely focused in bagels?
I mean, looking back at it, I wanted to say that when I did this, this was a long time ago. I'm saying that in the sense that I'm shocked at how nowadays the whole MBA speak, everybody's attuned to it. Everybody knows about exit strategies. Everybody knows about, DUI. Everybody knows a lot more business terminology, branding. I mean, this is stuff I had no idea about. I didn't go to business school. I studied economics in college. My father was a food broker, so I got food, and I had a good intuitive sense of business, but no real sophistication whatsoever. Now I lost your question.
Did you ever diversify into properties?
Okay, so the answer was no. I was all in with this business.
Gotcha.
At one point, however, the financing, the whole financing in the business we did it in stages. And this Bill guy who I alluded to,
yes,
there was a number of things he was good at. I would say this was his real expertise in terms of, figuring out, how to finance this thing through without franchising, and working it in stages from SBA loans. I forget exactly the sequence, but it was SBA loans, and then we had some private equity money. And then we had venture capital money. And then eventually at the end, Starbucks was a 20% owner of the business.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and
This guy Bill must have been a magic worker.
Yeah, this guy. Well, we were also kicking, you know what?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, this was an ascending brand, and it was a perfect. It was a perfect marriage with Starbucks because hello, bagels, coffee.
The peas in the pod.
We started to co-locate organically. We both be looking for the same pads, in shopping centers and so forth, and then. It was actually the VC who put this together. I should say. I don't. At that point, I think it was the VC that made the connection. But that was a whole other leap of bringing in big money and losing a lot of control and equity, or percentage-wise anyway, equity. But they convinced us that we couldn't go to the moon without them. And, they were kind of right. So anyway, again, I'm sorry. The question eluded me now.
Yeah, no, what we were talking about was just how, you weren't buying properties or reinvesting in properties.
Yeah. Thank you. So what happened is when the VCs came in, I decided to take some money out. I could at that point there was money to be taken out of the business because they were injecting a lot into it. And so I took out a chunk of change at that point and put it into, stocks and bonds, not real estate.
And okay.
That was an insurance policy.
Exactly.
And was it the right thing? Can I give you a little side? I hope my brother's not listening. It totally pissed me off that my brother, who did not, 5 years older, okay, smarter than me, whatever, he didn't take any money out at that point, which he could have as well. And so when we exited the business, obviously I came out ahead. You have brothers?
Yeah. My brother's my partner. His name is George.
You ever competitive with your brothers?
We're always competitive, but he's younger. He's 5 years younger than me. Super smart, super wild.
But the point is, the brother did very well. Thank you. And I'm like, I could have come out way ahead of him had I
kept the money
all in. But hindsight's 20/20. I'm totally glad that I did it. I mean, it was the right decision at that time.
You kind of hedged your bet.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. And it was. I'm glad that he did well. I mean, because really, I've said it. I've said it before, but not only my brother, not only Bill, not only the venture capitalists, but I want to pay a lot of homage to the hires that we made, who became significant owners of the business. Our director of operations, who had run like 400 Taco Bells before he came and worked for us. I mean, this is the kind of people we were attracting.
Wow.
Because we were an ascending brand. And Bill was right. We put the whole thing together. There's a big story there. And so, and my brother wasn't shy about, spending the money we needed to spend on these guys and give them the kind of equity upside they needed to play here. And so we had amazing talent. And if we hadn't had that amazing talent, we would have had hiccups. You don't build 38 stores in 6.5 years, without hiccups. And we had virtually none.
Wow. I've built 9 restaurants in my life.
That ain't easy.
Yeah, 9 restaurants of different concepts. Some of them burgers, some of them bars. But now I stuck with Papa Ray's Pizza. And 38 units is not a joke. I mean, and especially in such a small time frame. It's not. It's hard for the first 5 years. Is just figuring out how to have systems and operations to grow.
Either that or bring people in who had been there, done that, and let them.
But that's expensive. It's very expensive to do.
It's very expensive.
Yeah.
But we had the kind of trajectory that, picture the pizza business in like 1963.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I mean, it had such a runway, and that was Bagels when we that was before, by the way, gluten-free. Okay, long before. It was a matter of fact, when we started, you're way too young probably to remember this, but everybody was into carbo loading. Okay,
carb loading.
Carb loading. Okay, the way I like to say it is that I'm telling you, it was a big deal. Okay, everyone was good. Gyms was first opening. The idea of these fancy gyms, all this stuff was new, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, you go carbo load. You go work out. It's very healthy." And we weren't donuts. Okay, Bagels was a healthy alternative to donuts, even though there were 350 calories per bagel.
Sure.
Okay.
Without the cream cheese.
Without the cream cheese. Okay. But compared to donuts, it was health food, and it was carbo loading. But like what I was fond of saying was, it took 6.5 years for people to figure out that if you carbo load and you're not running marathons, you're going to get fat. And by the time the 6.5 years came, I was out. But it's crazy. But we were in the health food business.
Wow.
Better for you. Healthier for you.
Better, the better choice than a donut.
Much better.
Yeah. Wow.
And we passed donuts at some point.
Did Einstein bagels come to you, or did you go out looking for to sell?
Okay, so
how did the decision come?
Okay, so this is really, I find this whole story of Einstein's to be the most interesting of all, because I alluded to at the beginning of the conversation. From day one, I was always looking behind me to see who was coming along to chase the business.
Sure.
Because this is America. Hello, you got a good concept, you got a great concept, you're going to get copied. You're going to get imitated. You're going to get try to be aced out. It's just a question of when and how. So it was always on my mind. Call it paranoia. Everything had to be right all the time. And it wasn't easy. We spread from Seattle to Southern California, to south of Los Angeles. So, that's a pretty big geography, as well as, having the 38 stores in 6.5 years. At that point, Einstein comes to us, a good Chicago boy, started waste management in Chicago.
He started it?
Yeah, he and some partners. And then they went into Boston Chicken, which became Boston Market. You might have heard of that.
Yeah, we still have a couple out here.
Okay, yeah, that kind of came and went. And then same people, Blockbuster Video. Again, concepts that have come and gone. They decided to ride this bagel wave I was telling you about. Okay, big national trend. They were rolling up bagel operations across the country. They would go into, they got their hands on a lot of money. They went into local markets and found the best player and said, come on and join the party. No cash, piece of the action. They came to us with the same offer. It was totally different way of working. They were all about the stock price and the, big splash. We were all about build it brick by brick. We didn't feel confident in taking back paper for this business. So we rejected the offer. At that point, they said, take the offer or you're going to find a bagel shop across from every one of your bagel stores on the West Coast, and we can do it. So the choice is yours. We said, thank you. We got the team, we got the wherewithal. We'll see you on the battlefield, if you will. The next location we were going to go to was Chicago, as a matter of fact. We had it all planned. And it was really interesting exercise because we had to really get lean and mean at that point. You know, I think we had just opened up these other two markets, the Pacific Northwest and the Southern California markets. And it was too soon to say, but there were some storm clouds out there. Fortunately, the storm clouds weren't as apparent as they probably should have been to Einstein, because a year later, they came back to us and they offered us a full cash deal, and we took it.
Boom.
And
the rest is history.
There's no bagel blood on the street, you know.
I love that. I love that.
But it was white knuckles there for a while.
Yeah. That takes, as you say, hupska. What would you call it?
Chutzpah.
Yeah, hupska.
Chutzpah.
That takes a lot of guts because, you know, even if it's $100 million in paper, it's still a lot of money. Even if
you know what happened to those people?
No, tell me.
Got 5 cents on the dollar back when the whole thing cratered a year later.
Oh, it only took a year to crater? Oh, see, that's called a horse. See, it's God was good, my friend.
God was good, and we didn't like the way they were going. We didn't like the MO.
You could see it.
Huh?
You could see you saw the cracks in the walls.
Oh, the whole financing thing. You see, basically, they were making their money not from store day in, day out operations. Okay, they were making their money by jacking up the stock price and by basically banking these franchisees, okay, and getting it wasn't exactly a Ponzi scheme, but it wasn't
sounds like a little
far
bit
away from it.
Yeah.
Okay. In other words, as long as they were opening up units, okay, they were doing fine, and they had different entities, so the stock was under one entity, and the operations were another one, you know, and it was all a little bit
fishy.
You know, yeah, unless so it depends on how you looked at it. Okay, for a while they were doing great, but then, like for instance, talk about chutzpah. They went into the New York market, and their bagel was different than ours. Okay, and it was a little bit more of a, I don't know, I'm prejudiced.
It's a softer bagel, and you guys have more boiled bagels, probably, right?
Softer bagel. It was more of a I don't know. Let me put it this way. You know, you don't go into New York unless you've got a damn good product.
Sure.
I mean, this is Bagel Central.
Yeah.
You know, you just don't do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now they wanted to. You know, again, you want to maximize your stock price. You know, well, you're going to go into the major market, and you know, hey, we got 17 locations in the metropolitan New York area. Okay, how much is that? You know, so wow, the analysts are looking. You know, wow, you know, and look at what we're doing. You know, with the franchise fees and all of this stuff, and it all looked damn good until these places couldn't stop performing, which didn't take very long for them to stop performing. The individual units. And then the whole thing backed up. The whole thing backed up, and out they went. And Noah's is still around, and got sold and got sold and got sold, and various owners. And now it's owned by some big conglomerate who also owns. Do you have Pete's Coffee out there?
I've heard of it. I think I went to a Pete's Coffee in an airport one time.
La Boulangerie. They got a lot of brands. They got a lot of brands now.
No, I think I've seen a Pete's Coffee in an airport in California, maybe, or
they're on the coast now, and anyway. So
learned a lot today, Noah. We've learned a lot today. Your story is so many people can learn from your journey, and we've only talked about one section of your journey. I mean, you have a long history. I mean, your college days, and health problems, and even now you're consulting. May I ask how old you are?
73.
73, going strong.
Yep.
So Noah, I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope to maybe speak to you again in the future.
I hope so, John. I really enjoyed it. This is I like this kind of style. It's kind of freewheeling, and I think I'm about stories, and I think that's what you're doing here. Is you're hearing stories, and you're transmitting stories, and you learn, and your listeners are learning from the stories, and that's Hey, the Bible. Hello, it's all stories.
That's how you do it. That's how you do it. That's how you pass on from generation to generation.
Got it.
So your website is Noah Alper Consulting. Consulting.com. All right. Check out his book, Business Mensch. Thank you so much for coming on. And a special thank you to Jeremy Weiss for introducing us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jeremy's a great man.
Great guy. Great guy.
Okay.
Thank you and have a great day.
You too. Take care now.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Always Direct podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.